here we are again. It's yet another Tuesday. Thanks for everybody for coming. So far, I see Walter Moss and Amy something Hebrew letters. I'll give it a few minutes. Usually, the thing is now with YouTube is they take a long time to get out notifications, if they get out any at all. So we just have to try to stall a little bit. But of course, there's always thanking channel supporters. Not that many comes from the super chat really, but sometimes PayPal and things, and that it always surprises me when people do that. But anyway, I wanted to shout them out, and also a reminder that this is TruthFinders, not just truth seekers, because a person who seeks truth without intending to find it or thinking it's arrogant to say we found it is what I think the Bible would call double-minded, because what point is there in seeking truth if you're not allowed to find it? It doesn't make any sense at all. And so as Christians, we claim to have the truth. We claim to know something is true, and to the point where many would be willing to die for it. And the problem is that if someone says that we can't know the truth, then we can't even know that Jesus rose from the dead. And so what does the Bible say about that? Again, it would be double-minded at best, and possibly unsaved if a person doesn't know for sure that this is a fact of history. So I don't know what to do with Christians who say they don't know the truth, that truth can't be known, there's no absolutes. So this is TruthFinders for that reason, because we claim to have found it. If we haven't claimed that, then how can we be Christians? It just doesn't make any sense. Okay, Amy, you explained, thanks for that, what the Hebrew name means beloved. And there comes more people all of a sudden. We got Cullen Dresser, Good Servant, and Chow, and Amanda so far. Good to see you guys. And again, I just felt the need to explain that we find truth. We, as Christians, that's what we do. We claim to have found truth, and there's nothing arrogant about it. It's our personal conviction, and we're allowed to say it. And we shouldn't be ashamed to say that what our convictions are. So anyway, thanks again for channel supporters. Even, I think the biggest support is just showing up. And some people also, support financially, and that's really awesome. Not in any dire need, so don't put me high up on your priorities. But anyway, let's get into this. We're obviously going to do something about prophecy here as it relates to current events, because even though I caution against newspaper eschatology, where people just take everything that happens every day and say it's a prophecy fulfillment, but the fact is that there are unique things that have been the case since at least 1948, when Israel was reformed as a nation, because it's unprecedented for any of the groups of peoples that existed in the first century to have been wiped out and scattered and then reformed in their ancient land, speaking their ancient language. This is not an accident. I don't care what the Rothschilds did with their Balfour Declaration. The fact is that they could declare that all they wanted, but if the people weren't there and God didn't allow it, it wouldn't have happened. And the point about prophecy is that God knows the future, not that he necessarily causes the future. Because if you're causing it, then what credit is it to you to say that you know what's going to happen, if you've already scripted it? So God knows the future without causing it. And the fact is that since that has been the case, since that happened, then prophetic timetables have really stepped up in speed, because as long as they were not in the land, a lot of things couldn't happen literally. And in fact, that's where so many ideas came from about alternative interpretations like amillennialism or preterism or even historicism, because they didn't believe the prophecies were literal, that the Jews would be in the land and suffer all these things that are prophesied. So the fact that they've been there since 48 is telling us that yes, this is literal, and prophecy is not about the struggle of good and evil or anything like that. So when we look at what's going on right now, we have to look at it in light of the fact that Israel is in the land and in unbelief as expected. So what I wanted to focus on is what has to happen before anyone would see the mark of the beast. And the reason is there are a lot of people worried about what they might be forced to do in days to come regarding this pandemic, and whether, whatever its cause, whatever its reality, the fact that we can all agree on is that people are in a panic about it. And this is going to change the world, and anybody you ask on any end of the spectrum, any place on it at all, can agree that life isn't going to go back totally the way it was, no matter what or when. Because every time something major like this happens, people lose freedom. That's something we can guarantee. And we took a big step on, the World War is a big step on 9/11, and now this is another big step. Because all these things affect the world, even 9/11, even though it happened in the U.S., it always happens at some spot or another, but it spreads and it has repercussions. And the current thing going on has fundamentally changed a lot about the world. And like I said, it's not going to go back. Good to see more people in chat. I see you now, John B. and Victoria. And so the main point I want to drive at today is that there are certain things that have to happen before there's any such thing as the mark of the beast, and all the other things that go with it. And our peace comes from the Holy Spirit, but also from studying the Word and knowing what has to happen first that hasn't happened. That way we can be at peace because we're armed with knowledge of what God has said and promised. And again, like I said when I first started out, we're truth finders, not truth seekers. Every Christian is a truth finder. They have to be, because if you don't really know if Jesus rose from the dead, then how do you know you're a Christian? How do you know you're saved? Because you have to know that and believe it, and you can't be double-minded about it, because that doesn't work. The Bible says don't be double-minded. I know the context specifically in James is about asking God for things and not being sure whether you want them, but it has to apply even more to salvation itself, because how can you not be sure whether Jesus rose from the dead and be saved? That's the problem. So the concept of finding truth and standing on that conviction and saying this is absolute truth is fundamentally required of the Christian faith. So anyway, looking at that, you can see I got this chart up here. This is my most recent version of what I think the sequence is. I don't know when certain things start, but we do know that once they start, they will follow a certain sequence, and by Daniel 9, we know what the timing is as far as the duration. We don't know the time of year or anything like that. We can speculate, but that's all we can do. So I'm guessing the text is a little small for you guys on the screen there, so I'm going to try to first of all do a big picture thing and then zoom in on some stuff. What we got here is remaining Bible prophecy, and it starts way back here in Ezekiel 37, I think, is where we first see the dry bones prophecy. And it is all about a united kingdom of Israel and Judah restored in stages. That's what the dry bones vision or prophecy is about. It comes in stages, and it started way back when Israel was exiled, because they had to be gone before they can come back. Probably even earlier than this, but at the very least we can say the latest starting point would have been the exile of Israel in 70 AD. So it's a long-term fulfillment. That's this gray bar going across the from one side to the other horizontally, and it will end in the millennial kingdom of Ezekiel 40 through 48. So we've got this going on. At the same time, we have a lot of other things going on. And right now we're in this blue box on the left here, and I'm going to try to zoom in on that and put that on the screen. I hope you guys can see that. Let me know if that's still too small. Hopefully you can see the text. So I blew that up a little bit. If you're on a phone, I can't help you too much, but Let me see if I can blow that up just a little bit more. And you can see these two black triangles at the top. No, it's not a symbol of anything, but it just means Jesus comes down, we meet him in the air and go back up. That's the departure of the church. And I've got a boatload of scriptures here. And I think I have the link here to, well, I thought I had it copied. I guess I don't. Let me get my notes back out and copy the link to the chart that we're looking at here, because this is something you could download or print or whatever you want to do, and then you can look at these things yourself later. But there's all these scriptures here about the departure of the church, which ends the time of the Gentiles, the age of grace, and there's references to all that. I back up everything with references, otherwise I'm just speculating, and I should say it when I'm doing that. But I'm not speculating right now, because look at all those scriptures, and you can look at each one in context and see whether it's accurate. If I didn't want you to know, I wouldn't give you the references, because a lot of people will say that that we're cherry picking, but that's their point to prove. They have to prove that we're cherry picking by saying that look at these other scriptures and weigh them all. That's what I try to do. Oh, good to know you can see the text. Okay. Israel is exiled in 70 AD, and that was predicted in Luke 21:5-6. There's also a prophecy that a lot of people don't know about in Isaiah 66:8 about Israel being born in a day. And it pretty much happened. I mean, that's what that declaration was about, the Balfour one. And it was in 1948. I think it took till 49 to complete or something. And then Jerusalem was taken by Israel in 1967. And that happened very quickly, too. So if you look at that prophecy about Israel being born in a day, it certainly is an intriguing connection, if nothing more. And that could be said to have happened near the end. That's why I have a kind of a little box here. Sometime in here, however this duration is, it started in 1948 at the very least. And so it ends when, it doesn't say Israel ends, but the church age ends at the departure of the church. Obviously, seems like redundant, but had to be said. At any rate, I think this event is the catalyst that pushes everything over the edge. And we've taken another giant step toward it, but we're going to see all the other things that have to happen before we get to the midpoint of the tribulation, and we won't be here to see it. We Christians won't be here to see it. Yeah, there are people who think I'm absolutely wrong about this, and they just say I'm wrong. They don't prove that I'm wrong, and they don't do their own research. They point me to somebody else's, and I'm not interested in a discussion with somebody else, a third party. I do my own research. I would expect it if somebody wants to debate or, just discuss it, that they would do their own research too. That's not much to ask, really. But the fact is that there's plenty of scriptures that describe the church's departure, and I've gone over that in separate videos. But this, I think, as I said, is a catalyst for the rest of the end time events, because nothing beyond, this point, this is all the wrath of God, and we can't be in that. Now, the wrath of God, people try to quibble about when that starts, but the point is that biblically, if you look at all the scriptures on it, is that since Jesus is God, we start there, and since the Lamb in heaven is the one breaking the seals, then bad things happen on the earth, then by definition, that is the wrath of God, and it's acknowledged at the latest by the sixth seal, when people say to the rocks and they to hide, fall on them and hide them from the face of the one on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the day of their great wrath has come, and who can stand? So even the most rank unbelievers know when the wrath of God has begun, and it begins with the seals. So we cannot be here for those. And none of this stuff has happened. Now, the first four could kind of apply, you could say that these things have happened, but Jesus said it would be like birth pangs and would increase in intensity and frequency. So we would naturally expect that these things build up to that point, not that they would start suddenly as soon as we're gone. So, of course, we see the shadows of these things coming. But the first thing to happen, in my opinion, before even the seals kick off, is that Israel's neighbors try to wipe it off the map. Psalm 83. Some people argue that this is a past event only, and that can't be ruled out, but neither can the futurist view be ruled out. And so it seems to me that this catalyst of the rapture would embolden Israel's neighbors to attack it, because it would be such a major disruption, much more than we're seeing right now, and it would present a very good opportunity for the immediate neighbors of Israel to attack it. So, in my opinion, they'd try this, but they're destroyed and Israel gets more land, like closer to their original landmass promised to Abraham. And during this time is when I think Damascus will wind up being uninhabited by people. It says animals will graze there, but there won't be any people. At the same time that Israel is near extinction. This is Isaiah 17. And this hasn't happened yet. It can't happen while we're here. And so then, partly because, as I've explained in other videos and on my website, is because when the Apostle Paul talks about the rapture event, the departure, he never mentions any of these things that have to happen first. When he writes to us, especially 2 Thessalonians, in chapter 2, he says he was writing in response to a forgery that claimed the day of the Lord had already come. And so he would have mentioned that, don't you know you have to see this, this, and this happen first? He didn't say that. He said what has to happen first is the appearance of the man of sin, the son of perdition. And that can't happen while we're here either. And again, I've gone over these details before, so I don't need to do that again. But what I'm saying is that these other events must be past that, because the rapture is described only for the church. It's not seen in the Old Testament. And because the church itself is not seen in the Old Testament. It isn't even in Matthew 24 or anything like that, because that's to the Jews, about the Jews. This is us. And so I would expect that, as I said, the sequence to be the rapture or departure. Then the immediate neighbors of Israel try to attack it. They're destroyed, but it costs Israel quite a lot. And they result in more land, and then a deal is made, in my opinion, by the Antichrist to get them to lay down their arms in exchange for building the temple. And this, in turn, leads to the next opportune moment, which, in my opinion, is the Gog-Magog war, because this alliance of certain nations, not all the nations, forms with a different motive than wiping Israel out. They want to take a spoil. They want to take stuff that Israel has that they want. And Israel has some natural gas and so forth. And because of their weak state and having laid down their arms, these northern armies decide this is the time to attack. But they will be destroyed on the mountains of Israel, and that battle will be the one that God himself intervenes, and Israel starts up their temple worship. So this all makes sense as a sequence of one thing leading to another. Now, I think it's really hard to place this Ezekiel 39 when the Jews burn weapons from the result of the Gog-Magog war for 7 years and spend 7 years burying the dead, or 7 months burying the dead. So I don't know where else to put that exactly. Nobody really does, but I think it may happen there. And we're going to have, at the same time that this Gog-Magog stuff is going on, is when I believe the seals happen, which I believe equate to the beginning of sorrows that Jesus talked about. So, in Matthew 24. So I think Matthew 24 and Revelation 6 line up pretty well. And I've gone over that before. Let me see if I can quickly grab the link for that for my other prophecy page, which I posted before, but I wanted to post that again right now because it helps with a lot of these things too. But these seal judgments, I think, are the beginning of sorrows, and that will include first of all, false Christ. Could be just the Antichrist, but where there's a king, there's a kingdom. And so this is what Jesus said first when people asked, when his disciples asked him what to expect. He first of all said, "Don't be deceived, for many will come in my name." So that seems to be, in my opinion, the white horse. And then after that comes outright war. And this, again, like I said, this may be the Gog Magog war, because it's all happening in this, in this sequence. So, and then the result of that war is famine, and then a fourth part of the earth, which may be geographically or population-wise, we really can't say. And then there's a vast number of martyrs, people who, after seeing all these things, decide to turn to God, and they're put to death for that. Then comes what I mentioned earlier, the cosmic terror that causes everyone in the world to want to hide underground. And they have acknowledged the wrath of God. And then there's a silence, a break that you don't see between any of the other sets of judgments when the 144,000 are sealed. And those are all Jews, 12,000 from each tribe. They're named and numbered in Revelation, so this isn't left to imagination. This is, a real thing. And they are literal Jews, and we don't hear anything else about them except that they're sealed until way later in Revelation when they are seen on Mount Zion following the Lamb wherever he goes. So we don't know if they'll be here to evangelize. We don't know if they'll be martyrs. We just don't know anything about the 144,000, much except, the brief description in Revelation 6 there, or 6 through 8. I forget exactly where it is. I think it's chapter 6, but I could be wrong. Anyway, the 144,000, people make up all sorts of things about it, but the scripture only says how many from what tribes, and that they're sealed, and that they're pure and holy, and we never see them again until they're following the Lamb around. So everything else is speculation. But again, this is all after the rapture. So we got the rapture, some wars, expansion of Israel's land. They lie securely. They have their temple. They're starting their sacrifices, and then Magog tries to take it all, and they're defeated. And they burn the weapons. The Jews burn their weapons. So that we got that going on. All the while, this is going on, these 7 seals. So then we go to the next thing, and we still haven't seen the mark of the beast, have we? Mark of the beast is not yet. So we're not even close to that yet. Look at all these other things that have to happen as well. Not only the 7 seals, but also the 7 trumpets have to happen before we'll see the mark of the beast. We have, and I have references for that. We have the first trumpet, and compare 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 to the 1/4 of the seals. So they're not the same thing. Some people overlap these, and they say the seals are the same thing as the trumpets, are the same thing as the bowls, and they're just described in a different way. But we got different numbers and different events. So they can't all be the same, and they're increasing in intensity. Again, God is doling out judgment as he goes in stages to give people chances every step of the way. So the point is, though, that this is a sequence of things that have not happened and have to happen before we get to the mark of the beast. So we have all these other things. We have the burning mountain that hits the earth, hail, fire, wormwood, which poisons 1/3 of the fresh waterways. The sun, the moon, and the stars lose 1/3 of their light. We have the locusts out of the abyss that torment people for 5 months. We have a death of 1/3 of the world. And during this time, the 2 witnesses have been active. According to Zechariah 4:11 and Revelation 11:3-12, the 2 witnesses have been doing their thing outside of Jerusalem for 3.5 years. So they are killed at the end of that 3.5 years, but they rise again, and this terrifies everybody. And then there's a harvest of some kind. And then the Abomination of Desolation. That's the point that nobody can deny, is also in Daniel 9, where it says that, first of all, a 7-year treaty has been enforced. That started the first 3.5 years, and it's broken halfway through. And at that point is the abomination. What is that? That is, in biblical usage and historical usage, it means to desecrate the temple. So when the temple is desecrated, that means it had to have been erected, and they had to have been doing their sacrifices in order for them to be stopped. So all of that has to be happening that first 3.5 years. And then, when they see the temple desecrated and the Antichrist reveals himself and says, I must be worshipped as God, that's when the Jews will finally, some of them, I think a third of them, will finally wake up and take off and run to a place prepared for them, as I show over here during the bowl judgments for the second half. If you look at Mark 13:14 and Revelation 12, you'll see that they're protected for the second half. So the faithful Jews will be in a safe place during the bowl judgments, but the unfaithful Jews, 2/3 of them, will not be. They will be suffering all these things. So we have all these references here for what happens at this midpoint between those two halves, and we don't know if it takes any time at all. It's just that that's when the visions happen. There's a lot of, it's Revelation chapters 11 through 14 are just on this midpoint. So during that time, the temple in heaven is open. There's the vision of the woman and the dragon. The two beasts are described. We have the abomination of desolation is described. The mark of the beast is given then, and that's again where we see the 144,000 and another harvest. So the mark of the beast isn't until all this other stuff happens. Okay, so we have to have the departure of the church. We have to have the 7 seals, the 3.5 years worth of trumpet judgments. All of that has to happen before the mark of the beast is given. Whatever is going on now is certainly conditioning for that, people being willing to accept forced vaccination or whatever it is, ID, real ID, all those things are just warm-ups. And that's why I call this live stream wake-up call, because that's what I think is going on. Anytime you have a major worldwide event like this, it's a wake-up call. It doesn't mean, that the prophetic clock can't be stopped again and turned back, but it's unlikely, A, because of Israel in the land, and B, because the earth and the people in it are being so poisoned and altered that there's just not much chance of it going on very much longer, with the possibility of the prophecies ever being fulfilled. And that's always the devil's plan. Every step of the way he has failed, but every step of the way through history, he has tried to stop God's prophetic clock and thwart his plans somehow, but he can't. Anyway, the point is that God can allow these things to wake us up, because a lot of Christians just turn a blind eye to prophecy, even though the Bible is 1/3 prophecy, 1/4 to 1/3, and there's blessings promised to those who study it. The point is that we should, as Christians, be paying attention, and that something like this is certainly trying to get our attention for Christians to take this stuff seriously and to get the gospel out, because we don't want people left behind to go through this stuff. So that's what's going on. If anything, it's a scare. It's supposed to be a scare. The people who perpetrated have one purpose, and God has another, because anything could be used for that purpose. But this is certainly unavoidable, undeniable that God is trying to also get our attention. A question in the chat: yes, there is a pre-trib rapture. I sorry if I didn't make that clear. This is way back here, these two triangles here. We are in this blue box, and that's the first thing that happens, is the rapture, then all this other stuff. Okay, so what I'm saying is, for Christians, it ends here. The rest of this is for people who are not Christians at this time. So the rapture is the next thing that happens, and the reason I can keep telling people that we won't be suffering the mark of the beast is because A, the rapture hasn't happened yet, and we're not going to be here for it, and B, even if I were wrong, the point is that all these other things have to happen before you get to the mark of the beast. So, any way you look at it, we're not there. We have not started the cosmic events such as the sun and the moon going dark, or the stars falling from the sky, or people hiding underground and openly stating that the wrath of God has come. Okay, that nobody's even saying that now. So, but it certainly is a wake-up call. That was my whole point of this. But you can look at the rest of the chart, all the things that have to happen, and it will be unmistakable. But I wanted to really focus on the beginning part here, because since all these things have not happened, then nothing we see is the mark of the beast. Okay, even if I were wrong about where the rapture is, which I'm not, because personal convictions, and we find truth, we don't just seek it, because otherwise we wouldn't be believers if we didn't believe in absolute truth. Anyway, the point is that the mark of the beast isn't something that Christians are going to have to be concerned about, because it's unmistakable, even for people who are left behind, those being unbelievers at the present time. It will be undeniable. If nothing else, we could leave this, copies of the chart around for people to go have a map, to have some idea of what's going on, because at least by the end of the seals, all we know that the tribulation starts when the 7-year treaty or covenant is enforced. Whether it's an existing one that is reinforced or one that's been on the books but hasn't been put into practice, whatever it is, it's going to be set for 7 years, and it will involve the Jews being allowed to put up their temple. I'm fairly certain about that. So that's the sequence of events that we're looking at, and why we should take things like are going on in the world right now as not the wrath of God, but as a wake-up call to get our lives in order and get busy doing what we're supposed to be doing as Christians. So hopefully I got that point across, because that's the main thing. Again, it's, we should be paying attention to the prophecies in the Bible and know how God does things and be familiar with that by studying the scriptures, the past prophecies as well, so we know what to expect and how to interpret the ones that haven't happened yet. So the rapture is the departure of the church. It was translated departure in all English versions before the King James. It was always a departure because that's what it says in the Greek. It says the departure. So anyway, let me take a look at the chat. Let's see. Yeah, don't watch TV. Don't pay attention to the MSM, the fake news. Let's see. Good to see Franco Stagno. In order for us to be in the tribulation, we have to see 1/3 of the earth straight. Well, yeah, 1/4 and then 1/3. But it is a wake-up call. Absolutely. Let's see. No, I know you were asking somebody else, child, asking Vic, but I haven't heard of Geneva Pilgrim. But that's the thing, is people are getting worried. And Jesus said not to worry. That doesn't mean not to plan or not to brace yourself. It just means not to worry. And you have less worry when you prepare as much as you can and leave the rest to God and trust Him for that. And also for the fact that you may have to suffer. We just don't know. There are Christians throughout history have had to suffer in terrible ways. But the point is that worrying about it won't make it better. And by being more familiar with Bible prophecy, we have less worry because we know what to expect. And we know from looking at the scriptures that I've got here on the chart that we're nowhere near the mark of the beast. We will not see the wrath of God. And even the most mild things have not happened yet. Like I was saying earlier, false Christ, yeah, there always have been. There's always been war, but not that particular one. There's been famine and there's been deaths, and there's been martyrs. But there's going to be something special about it after this, because, like I said, after our age, because there's an antichrist and there's a particular war with a particular motivation that haven't happened yet. So the thing is, those are the wrath of God, because the Lamb is opening the seals. The Lamb is God. Therefore, He wouldn't be bringing wrath on Himself, on us, on His body. So we have to be out of here before that. But like I said, whether the seals are part of whether the tribulation begins at the beginning of the seals or the end of the seals, the point is that we won't be here for any of that, either way. Because the tribulation doesn't start with our departure. It starts with the signing of the 7-year agreement. Let's see. But yeah, this is about as simple of a chart as I could possibly make, with including all the scriptures that I think, are pertinent. There's certainly more, but anyway, hopefully that will help. And if you didn't get the link, it's up there earlier in the chat somewhere. And it's possible, too, that the severity of the tribulation may turn people to God who otherwise might not have, and so it can be an act of mercy even then. Let's see. Oh, Geneva Pilgrim is ex-Hebrew roots. Okay, that sounds interesting. Maybe if you find a link, you can post that either here or under the video when it's done rendering, so people can check that out, maybe both. But yeah, if you see any Christians worrying, try to reassure them that, and even if all you do is show them this chart and say, look, these things have to happen before the mark of the beast or anything like that. That doesn't mean we won't suffer. It just means we won't suffer the wrath of God. And the wrath of God begins with the first seal. So this is reassuring, and that's what the Apostle Paul was doing when he told the Thessalonians, or wrote in 2 Thessalonians, not to believe rumors that, and a forgery that allegedly came from him, that the day of the Lord was at hand. It had already come in their day. There were people saying then what they say now, that we're already in the tribulation, and that's not true. And it would still be a false rumor. So, yeah, Matthew 24 is for the church. Like I said, the beginning of sorrows, he says first, and that's the seals. We won't be here for that. And possibly also into the trumpets a little bit, but then the time of Jacob's trouble that Jesus said, the time like no other, which he was quoting the Old Testament when he said that, would be these bowl judgments. So knowing this ahead of time gives us assurance that we won't suffer the wrath of God, and for anyone left behind who does suffer it, that they might turn to him because they will know that these things are true. So that's why we need to leave that behind. So, and thanks for the links again, Chow. He's always on it with those. Hey, James Mason, good to see you too. Yes, this event will change the world, and we don't know how much, but we do know it will change, because they are always putting things in place, whether there are things like 5G or forced vaccinations or just basically taking away all our freedoms. They took away a lot on 9/11. They've taken away a lot more now. But life is still going on somehow. And this is exactly what I expected at the time when the rapture will happen, because even partway through the tribulation, people are still able to buy and sell. It's just really hard. So it can't be devastating to the point where everybody's just, unable, all starving to death or whatever, because people have to be, even at the midpoint of the tribulation, when the two witnesses are killed, people send each other gifts. How bad can life be, and people still can send each other gifts? So that's a marker that I look at, or a boundary that tells me that life will be, perilous times, like was prophesied, but not so perilous that it can't function at all. So this is a step, a warning, a wake-up call, and that's all it is, but we should heed it. It's important to heed it and do what we can during this time, but the important thing also is not to worry. So that doesn't, again, mean that bad things won't happen. It just means not to worry. And you do what you can and don't worry about the rest. It's easy to say, but we have to say it. Let's see. They're getting everything ready for the beast system. Absolutely. It's the so-called global governance, which is being put on the fast track now because of a pandemic that crosses borders, which is not an accident. Then they can invoke a world government that overrides national sovereignty. And this has never gone well. It's what was, in so many ways, the days of Noah and Lot, as far as, the condition of people. But we know of the Tower of Babel and people like Nimrod, that it was a desire to unify the world under one head that was, God said, no, not yet. but eventually he will allow it for a short time. That's what the beast kingdom will be. But even that beast kingdom will never really successfully have the whole world because of all the wars and stuff that go on, the kings from the east and all that. It will be war all the time, all sorts of bad things happening. I mean, there may be reprieves, but certainly we are on the cusp of all that, and that means our departure is even nearer, which the Apostle Paul said is to comfort each other with these words, so it's not something to worry about. It's something to look forward to, our departure, and get our acting gear for getting the gospel spread before that, so more of us can go. So if nothing else, I hope to have gotten the idea across that as Christians we should be offering people the only means of peace, and making sure that we aren't double-minded in saying that what we know to be true, that Jesus is coming back, it is literal, and we can rest assured in that. So, and there, I also mentioned that there's a blessing for studying prophecy, and there's also a crown of righteousness that's mentioned in the epistles that says, for those who long for his appearing. So there's, some people say it's terrible because, to want Jesus to return because there's too many people who are still lost. But no matter when he comes, that's going to be the case. And the longer he waits, the more people are born and more people may be lost. So it's a double-edged sword. But all I know is the Bible says that there's a crown of righteousness for those who long for his appearing. And the end of Revelation says, even so come Lord Jesus. So how can that be bad? And the Bible says that, certain things we can do to try to hasten his appearing. So it's good. It's not bad to want Jesus to return and to believe absolutely that this is true. Why wouldn't we believe what Jesus said is true? That's just ridiculous. But there are a lot of Christians who think that we can't know anything, can't state our convictions, even though they will also, if we say we absolutely believe the rapture is pre-trib, and they'll say, you're totally wrong, but there's no absolute truth. You should be open to other ideas, but we're certain that we're right. The door swings both ways. But anyway, any other comments or questions in the chat? I know we're a little shorter than normal, but I wanted to keep it simple because there's too much worrying going on. And it can be a good motivator if you take advantage of it, to store up or whatever you got to do, get your life in order. Worry can drive you to that, but you can't live there. It's not a good place to live. And so we're supposed to be doing our jobs. Jesus will want to find us, when he comes, will want to find us doing what he put us here to do. And for each of us, that's going to be a little different in some regards. In others, it's the same, like spreading the gospel. Which doesn't mean everybody's an evangelist. It just means always be ready to give an answer for the hope that you have, which is not just your personal testimony. It's why do you believe what you believe? How do you know Jesus rose from the dead? Is it based on evidence? Did you see a vision? Whatever it is, you have to have some reason for the hope that you have. And this is what we need to be doing, not quarantining ourselves in every respect, because we can still get online and call people, and you can still go outside. You should go outside and get some vitamin D and fresh air and take whatever you can food-wise, supplement-wise, to build up your immune system. I've been feeling a sore throat trying to come on, over the last 4 or 5 days, and I just keep taking my vitamin C and black elderberry and gargle with colloidal silver, and it keeps going back down. It'll come back, and I take the stuff and it goes back down. And drink your hot liquids and all that sort of thing. But so it's not like we just sit around and go, I'm gonna go and ignore everything and just go about my business and trust God not to let me catch anything, even if all that is true. Which there's plenty of doubt about that. But the thing is that, yes, people are getting sick, but we don't know exactly why. It could be that viruses can only be gotten by injection. Some people say that it has to get in your bloodstream. Other people say, well, it's the thing is, even though it's not alive, it's a bit of protein or something that is encoded in fat, a layer of fat, and so any kind of foaming soap or anything like that that breaks down the fat is a best defense against it. If they come from the outside, I don't know one way or another. I can't prove anything. I'm not a doctor or a chemist or anything, but yeah, play it safe. Even if you don't believe necessarily that viruses are contagious, it's still not a bad idea to store up things and to spend some more time at home and rethink things while you have the opportunity to do it, and see what you can do online or on phone or whatever to, email or whatever it is to help each other. Let's see. Thoughts on the 1,000 years of peace? No, that has not come yet. That is at the end of the tribulation. That's this part over here. Let me try to zoom in on that. After the 7 years, Jesus comes back. He sets up shop, and the 1,000 years of the millennial kingdom you can read about in Ezekiel 40 through 48. That's when all the rest of the prophecies are fulfilled about what God promised to Abraham and the nation of Israel. So that has not happened yet. Because when you look at the details of how it's described, there's no time in history when that could be said to be true. And so people who insist that it has happened or is happening will allegorize. They have to allegorize in order to make their argument. But the Bible doesn't allow allegory for that, with any consistency. So no, we're not in the 1,000 years yet. And that's at least 7 years off from when we leave. Let's see. Doctors say to eat better. Yeah, make sure you're not living on Twinkies and soda pop. Try to get, let's see, to get vitamin D something or other, D13 or something, and vitamin C are important. And those things, vitamin D comes from sunshine, but you also can get it from animal products. It's not so easy to get from plant products. It's the wrong kind of something. I forget the details, but getting it from animals. So I think it's especially the fat, like butter, any kind of animal fat. I'm sketchy on the details, but those things, you get your vitamins and from the sun and from meat and some vitamin C, and get outside and try to keep active, Let's see. It's supposed to be harder to catch than regular flu. I'm not sure whether it's harder to catch or not. It's mostly, and people say not to take Advil, even though supposedly it hurts, but they say not to take Advil because it makes it harder for your body to fight against it or something, because the fever helps to kill the germs. And I think it's up to like 102 or so that it's beneficial. After that, it kind of gets counterproductive. So, but, if it gets higher than that, they say, to take Tylenol, but you don't want to overdo it, if you're going to self-treat at home. Try to deal with the sore throat by taking lots of liquids, hot liquids, chicken soup, tea, coffee, anything hot liquids. It helps to thin out the mucus and not give the germs a good place to multiply in. So if you get it while it's in your throat, supposedly it starts as a sore throat, treat it while it's there, then it won't get into your lungs. That's the idea, because if whatever you swallow goes in your stomach and the germs die, because these aren't bacteria. So the protein breaks down quickly in your stomach. So you want to keep drinking liquids, hotter the better, not to burn yourself, but those are all the things that people are saying work. Vitamin D and K2. Okay, thanks for that. Let's see. Grocery store right now. I had to pick up a few things. All the toilet paper is gone again. Sam's Club is finally putting purchase limits. All the stores are finally putting purchase limits on things. They should have done that like a week ago or at least. Um, it's sometimes you can get it at Amazon. What you should do is put in an order for some if you can, and it might be a month before you get it, but um, it's like waiting in line. Only you don't have to sit there and wait. You just put in an order and that's another thing Christians could do to help each other is to network and say who is out of something and try to share what we've got. Yep, get outside. Oh, and they say that the least optimal conditions for viruses are a dry heat. So you want to keep your skin moist though, because you don't want cracks in your skin that the germs can get into. Because if your skin is nice and moist, the germs cannot get in through your skin. So even though you should, wash with foaming hand soap would probably do a better job of breaking down fast, but then put some lotion on. But dry heat, they say, I think around 80 degrees. So the problem's going to come when it gets nice and hot outside. People will turn on the air conditioner. It'll dry out the air, but it won't make it hot. That's the problem. So it's kind of a fine line. Um, let's see. Yeah, some of you missed all the whole talk. It was mainly about not worrying because we know what to expect and we're not going to see the mark of the beast or anything. Because look at all the stuff that has to happen before that. And the next thing to happen is our departure. So things are, this is a wake up call that we need to pay attention to. Any kind of world event like this that sets up global governance, as they call it, and makes it more of a reality instead of just on paper, then we know we've got taken a step closer to the time of the end, which is our departure, but still we need to get the gospel out. Yeah, pre-see your nose with a hairdryer. Hairdryer wouldn't be a bad idea, but you're going to burn the thing out after a short time. Yeah, we were about the limit of purchases when we were in a store, about a week or so ago, and we heard people in the next aisle being told that no, you can't have 6 of those, you can only have 2. And they insisted they wanted 6 of them, but no, the sign says 2, you can only have 2. But if they're not paying attention, then people are going to get away with it. We've been in the grocery store in the morning. Yeah, that's the thing is you have to go early. A lot of stores don't open till 9 now. But if you go, at least at Sam's Club, they have Tuesday and Thursday, 7 to 9 is just for people at high risk, such as senior citizens. I am old enough to qualify. If I wanted to get up that early, if I really needed something, I could go to Sam's on a Tuesday or Thursday and get in at 7 a.m. But yeah, the earlier the better. Also, if you have any friends that work in the stocking department, not stockings that you wear, of course, but stocking groceries, try to find out when the trucks come. Sometimes even the clerks there will tell you when the trucks come, and you know what day to be there early. Even if you can't get in till 9, you probably show up an hour early and you might get a chance. I talked with a German Baptist friend, and they are having church by calling a phone number. Okay, yeah, ours has been doing it on Facebook Live events. I've seen other churches do that too, where it doesn't have to be Facebook. Any place where a bunch of people at church can have access, you can do a live stream that way. Also, we have YouTube and videos and all that, so, but you still need to network with people. Let's see what else in the chat. Can't expect non-Christians to live by Christian standards. That is absolutely true. But we should expect Christians to live by it. Unfortunately, that's not often true. Next thing to happen is our departure. Absolutely. Let's see. Licorice root. I cannot stand licorice anything, but, I guess if I was desperate, I'd find a way to put it in something I could get down. I don't know. Let's see. Don't use the internet. Oh, German Baptists don't use the internet. Oh, okay, I see. Primitive Baptists, I guess they're like that. Yep. And zinc is important. If you're low, some medications people take can put them low at zinc. I think blood pressure medicines might be among those. Some people are finding out that there's some correlation between how high at risk someone is and whether they're on blood pressure meds. There's something about that. Most Christians fail woefully short of the glory of God. Yep. Yep. 1 Corinthians 3, that there would be people who will lose everything, all their work. They had no works, and they will look as though they escaped through a wall of flames, but they themselves will be saved. It says so point blank. Alkaline, okay. But again, animal fat is an important. There was something about it. Like I said, I'm sketchy on the details, but closing all churches. I don't know. Well, that doesn't surprise me. Why was the pastor imprisoned? That would be interesting to know the details. Immune, zinc, vitamin D3, and vitamin C. Yep. So, even, that probably it's not the best, but if your, money is tight or anything like that, you can get a fair number of vitamins through breakfast cereals like Total. And I also get supplemental vitamin C. And black elderberry, I get these, this is called Sambucol. Type that, Sambucol. Is black elderberry. You can get it in different forms. I get the one that's a little tablet. It dissolves in your mouth. Let's see. I don't think Tylenol is an NSAID. I forget what it's called, but I don't think it's an NSAID. Motrin, ibuprofen are NSAIDs, and so is Aleve. So you don't want to take those, but if you're desperate to get your fever reduced, if it's above 102, then you can take Tylenol. And for pain in general, for holding a church service? Oh, because they violated some rule about how many people can gather. Okay, I see. But again, freedom's lost, but hey. Good to be stocked up on anything you can stock up on right now, because even if you don't need it, there might be somebody else who does and you have it, so you can share. So yeah, before I knew that about Advil, I loaded up on Advil, but we still have enough Tylenol laying around, but I'm hoping we don't need it. Like I said, try not to use it till your fever is at least 102. But the most important thing is to give your immune system all you can and get the right kind of stuff in your body, and drink the liquids. So, Captain Crunch, I don't think there's anything of value in there except taste. And yeah, it tears up your mouth and you still eat it because it's so good. It's like sugar crunch. It was a pretty good cereal, but pretty bad for you. Tylenol depletes glutathione needed in infection. Okay. Well, all I know is that they were just saying don't take Advil, but they said Tylenol would be okay for the fever. But yeah, if as a last resort, I suppose. See, we keep a lot of peanuts around and chocolate chips. It's nice if you want a little snack, just some peanuts and chocolate chips. I keep the chocolate chips in the fridge and mix them with peanuts and have a nice little snack, and it's got protein in it, at least. So even though it's plant protein, it's okay. Yeah, sugar is bad, but that's why you don't want to overload on it. Try to keep it to a minimum anyway. So yeah, lots of people with good advice on how to shore up your immune system and what probably would not work if you're come down with something. So anyway, the main thing was that this is a wake-up call, and we prepare what we can and don't worry about the rest. That's all we can do. And we should be leading in that regard as Christians to the rest of the world and saying these Christians are not worried. They're not, which is not going to help your immune system either. But anyway, somehow we've managed to jabber for another half hour. And yeah, the rapture is a real thing the Bible teaches. I got all those scriptures on the screen there. You can get them also from some of the links, but there they are. We'll blow those way up. So we got, I'll just read them off. John 11, 25, 26. For what, Jesus is talking about going away and preparing a place and coming back. That's absolutely, it's the last thing he said at the Last Supper, pretty much. And talking about the wedding analogy and all that. That this is something he didn't, it was before the cross and all, but it's such an uncanny parallel. And I think that that was 11, that was 14 is where he talks, all that about the Last Supper. And then 1 Corinthians 15, 50 to 53, 1 Thessalonians 4, 15 and 18, 5, 1 to 11, and 2 Thessalonians 2, 1 to 12, and Revelation 3:10 come up here. So we got bunches of scriptures on that, and, those are the main ones, but that's the next thing. But we see all these other things, which is why I have that on the screen, the thumbnail. Also, when you see these things happening, you know that they're near, right at the door. So because we see these things happening, it is a wake-up call. We should know that our departure is even nearer than the tribulation. So anyway, there's so many layers to this and angles, but our concern as Christian is to know what the Bible says so we don't worry and do what we can, try to network and everybody, pray for everybody. I know there's people, more and more people we're finding that are sick with whatever, and because of all the other stuff going on, that it's hard to get supplies or hospital beds in some places. In our state, it isn't too bad. Supposedly, we have plenty of capacity, so that's nice. But anyway, do what you can. Don't worry about the rest. And this is a wake-up call. So thanks, everybody, for coming again. And comments under the video, or likes and share, etc., etc. And we will see you all next week. Thanks for coming.